let's just turn our attention back. We touched a little bit on Keegan Bradley, some of the choices, and of course he will face the press, the questions that he sort of moved around so far, and he has been saved to a degree by the fact they were stunning today. Like, the plan kicked in real late, but the fact is it was too much to do going into this final day. So, Andrew, I suppose for you, praise has been heaped all week long on Luke Donald. What is the difference between these two captains, and were they the difference?
Well, you still got to rely on your top players, your 12 boys that are out there doing it. I think the preparation, the understanding of what makes each other tick. But the European side under Luke's guidance, they really delve deep into what they need to do, how they need to make these players prepare. They were unbelievably prepared. Paul McGinley talks about that all the time. The preparation was perfect, and they got the results at the end of the day. And I think it's just that attention to detail that Luke Donald and his team were capable of, and gave the European side, that made a massive difference in the end. I think maybe Keegan Bradley and his boys slightly naive.
These are wonderful scenes, seeing the Europeans celebrate with the European fans that are here, and we're getting a good glimpse of just how many there were. At times you didn't hear them. There's a lot of nonsense shouted out through this week. And that was certainly one of the talking points, and not in a very good way. I suppose just Rich, to pull it together without focusing on it, this is not what Hazeltine looked like in 2016. It was a very different, that was a good vibe at Hazeltine.
It's better.
It was certainly better than this.
Yeah.
Is there any concern that the tone has been lowered, and that we really need to respond and make sure it goes back to where it should be in terms of decorum for this sport and what the Ryder Cup stands for?
I do, absolutely. Listen, we all knew what the New York fans were like. I mean, there's been talk about it going into this for many moons. And listen, we got what we expected. There's no doubt about that. I just kind of think, this is a different crowd. This is a different city to play in. How the Europeans handled it once again was outstanding. Even the Americans weren't they weren't immune to it. They heard it as well when they weren't playing. Scotty Scheffler, I know, heard it as world number one. But listen, to come in here in a very, very hostile environment, Europeans getting it done. Hopefully, we can figure out a way to kind of tone it down outside the ropes just a little bit. But listen, we all have passion for this event, and it's a good one. It is a good one.
How do you suppose those scenes are going to look when we get to Adair Manor, Andrew? What do you think that's going to be like in terms of an atmosphere?
Well, it's going to be incredible, and it's Adair Manor has been set up, with the expectation of getting the Ryder Cup for some time. The Irish hospitality arguably is second to none. The atmosphere there, the camaraderie, the fun, the crowd, everything is just going to be absolutely spectacular.
And they won't be able to fit 50,000 fans in there either. There's still going to be a lot of libations to be had in Ireland, but they're not going to have 50,000, a little bit smaller venue, but it's still going to be incredible.
When you see this, well, you think they're playing at home.
Well, listen, at one stage, well, several stages actually over the first 2 days, it sounded like it to a certain extent. European crowds were louder than the American crowds. Such was the brilliance of the European team. They were told what they had to do, went out there, silenced the crowd, and they did exactly that.
Amazing day as well. To our right side here on the hill, there's a few Americans that have had enough here today to have changed teams. Cheering for Europe now, fantastic. The things you do for a selfie. Well, that's one worth keeping.
Oh, that's incredible. Good on you.
There must be, Andrew, do you think there'll be a sense of relief as well for this European team now? Because that would have been really quite uncomfortable on the heart rate out there.
A massive relief. They're looking at it and they're looking at the scoreboard. A lot of these guys, the way they play, the scoreboard watchers, try and concentrate on their own job, their own business, but at the same time taking a peek, looking at it, going, oh goodness me, where on earth are these points going to come from? And that in its own way was distracting. Like you said, they were starting to look at, well, this potentially could have been a blunder at Bethpage, but fortunately for Europe's side, it all worked out in the end, and it was absolute pure theatre right the way to the finish.
Rich, golf takes a while. It's a long walk. It's peaceful, it's tranquil, it's for a calm mind, a steady hand. Apart from the Ryder Cup, is that why it's the sporting occasion in this particular game that resonates with fans, not just of golf, but of sports in general so much?
I got to say that I never looked at the Ryder Cup in this way before I started working for Sky Sports, and you turned me on to a completely different world, and I thank you guys for it, because It is amazing watching all these Europeans. And I know I'm probably closer with the European Tour players than I am with the U.S. players just because we're around them so often. But I got to say, it's opened my eyes to how special this event truly is. And I couldn't be any prouder than the Europeans. Obviously, I'm red, white, and blue to the core. But listen, these guys, they're amazing. As everybody knows, Tommy and his family are close friends of mine. But wow, they were brilliant this week, and it was well earned.
Yeah, no, it was. Again, the preparation, how they were able to control themselves out there, their emotions, you know, the intensity that these guys are having to concentrate and play under and still play the spectacular level of golf that they put together is just head-scratching. It's sheer and utter brilliance.
I really hope that they don't have to do the press conference for about another hour, because I think then it would be awfully funny to hear what they have to say about a lot of things. But I know they're going to get in there, get this thing over with, and get on their buses, go back to the room, a hotel, and let loose.
Well, here's one for you as we see Captain Donald head in there. Should the Ryder Cup captaincy be a nod to greatness in this sport given to our great major champions, as we've seen quite often, or is it a job that should just be for the best man, whoever that may be? Remember, all this stuff we're seeing from Luke, a lot of credit does belong to people like Paul McGinley, who went up against an icon in Tom Watson and completely outdid him there at Glen Eagles.
Well, my feeling on that was you don't give it as an award, you give it to, this isn't about winning the Ryder Cup. I don't really, at that stage, I don't care what that person has achieved. If they can blend the team together and get the right result, you give it to the right man for the job. But of course, as things have evolved over the years, and you know, we had huge big names, you know, that helped create the European Tour and make it what it was. You know, I can understand that argument as to how some of those players would be rewarded with that.
He didn't look himself across these last 2 days, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It looked like it was all a little bit too much. Watching at home, you might think, well, the cheers, it's one thing. I'm sure on social media you've seen more of it. Those mics get dipped when the language is foul. It has to be to protect the viewers at home. All ages, all different types of people who want to consume sport in their own way and in a safe way as well. But it was hideous at times, and he did look quite uncomfortable out there today, Rich.
Well, you know, funny enough, it was hideous from the MC before the matches even started on Saturday morning. So, again, yeah, I can only imagine what they've heard. He and Shane Lowry, I know, were kind of the brunt of a lot of it, and they were the massive, I think the biggest targets for the Americans to take out on. Again, that's the one thing that I dislike about the Ryder Cup when it comes over to the United States, because this is not the fans that I know. This is not the people that love the game. People that I know love the game. They're also the ones that go to the Masters. They go to the PGA Championship. They go to those. Listen, we don't see any of this at the Masters. Is it good and fun? Yes, it's nice to see people getting excited and verbal. But once you cross the line, I mean, come on, really? You're an adult.
Well, look, it's certainly something they've got to look at. You know, they've got to. It's probably reached a level here. But then again, everybody that was involved from a European side knew what they were going to be facing when they came here. You know, the stories were true. They prepped as hard as they possibly could, as hard as was physically possible to do something like that, to deal with that kind of abuse that was getting thrown at them. They were prepared, much harder for their families and loved ones, of course, but you know, they did what they did what they could do, and that certainly helped get them through there to the victory. But I certainly think protocols will be put in place to make sure that can be minimised in the future.
Oh, and if nothing else, I think the fans are going to be a little bit more clever with their insults than the New Yorkers' typical ones, if you can imagine that.